The Jehovah's Witnesses have just won their appeal against the Norwegian government to get not just their religious status back, but millions of dollars worth of grants, legitimizing them as a religion and diminishing the impact of shunning in cult. Now, we're going to go through what this means, what happened next, and why this is not yet over. Hi, everybody. I'm JW Caleb, and we're going to go through what happened in Norway. But before that, let's just recap. Why is Norway important? Why do we care what happened in Norway? What even is happening in Norway? Well, in 2024, the Jehovah's Witnesses went to the Norwegian courts because they had been removed their religious status. And with the religious status, not just the right to marry people, but what they care the most, grants. They were receiving, like, I believe $1.5 million per year just as a grant from the government just for existing. So they were like, we want our money back and also our religious status back, because we don't like it when you tell me that we can shun people, right? This all happened because Jan Fran Nielsen and other apostates decided to report the Jehovah's Witnesses, talking about how they actually shun people. They shun members who leave, and that makes it coercive. That makes it so you can't actually leave without, threat of shunning, because the threat of shunning is there. You don't want to leave and get shunned by literally every single person you know. So that's what they were doing in Norway. They were like, we want our religious registration back. We want our money back. We want it. So we're gonna fight you for it, because shunning is actually not that bad. Shunning is fine. We have the right to shun people, and shunning is not actually a threat. Now, the main issue with shunning is that if you shun everybody who doesn't follow the rules or who doesn't want to be a part of your religion, then you are putting pretty much like barriers for those people to leave. You can't put barriers for anybody to leave or to join a religion, because that goes against freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is a fundamental human right that Norway is actually very famous for defending it. And it tells you that you can either join or leave any religion freely. You should not face any consequences for either joining or leaving any religion. That's what freedom of religion is. You can be any part of religion, and you can enjoy, leaving this religion and having the freedom to choose another religion, right? That is freedom of religion. So that's why in the Norwegian courts, they were like, no, we're not going to give you any funding, because you're actually affecting freedom of religion, right? In January 2024, the Oslo court district held a trial examining everything that the Jehovah's Witnesses had to say and everything that the apostates had to say, like people like me, people like Jan Fran Nielsen, that actually believe that shunning is something that a religion should not be able to do. I'm just going to quickly go over it. I made a video about it like about a year ago, going through like each day by day, what happened in the trial and everything. But they basically argued that shunning isn't that bad, first of all. And second, that, like anyone can just join and leave their religion and whatever. That is not, what the case was for. The apostates, or the people who were against the religious registration of their Jehovah's Witnesses, argued not just that shunning is bad and is against your freedom of religion, but that this religion makes a point of baptizing minors. So if you can baptize a minor and you also shun people who leave, then that means that shunning goes to minors as well, right? So making it even worse. Not only that, but very brave ex-Jehovah's Witnesses came forward and were like, yep, that is basically what happened to me. I suffered some sort of, tragedy or like abuse or whatever inside this religion. I tried to leave, and then everyone shunned me, leaving me in a worse position than ever. And not only was I a victim, but now I didn't have any of my friends and family to help me through this hard situation. The court sided with the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, being like, yeah, no, shunning is bad. Shunning goes against freedom of religion, and you do shunning to children. So, we're not going to do it right now. Obviously, that's not what this ends, right? That's not where any of this ends, because the Jehovah's Witnesses were still able to file an appeal. And that is what they did like just a few months ago. A few months ago, they were like, we don't agree with this. And they filed an appeal with the Norwegian appeal thing. And in avoidjw.org, you can see exactly what happened day to day. I'm just going to recap what happened in there. These are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses testifying. Some weren't testifying. Some were there, like here, Apostate Barbie is here to just make me jealous, if I'm honest, because I would love to be Apostate Barbie right here, like, and just be there in Norway with everybody, because this is a monumental thing. I'll go through why this is a monumental thing before we finish this segment. But This is a very, very, very important thing. Anyway, so in Oslo, Norway, it was an appeal. All of these people like testified again. Raquel, I don't know her last name, but she also like testified again. She had testified before. We just checked all of the evidence that we had before with new evidence supporting the ex-Jehovah's Witness side, which it's why everyone thought, yeah, no, they're gonna lose the appeal. And if they lose the appeal, this is Jan Fred Nielsen and the people. This is Jan Fred Nielsen, the person who started this basically in Norway, along with the people who also like started this and testified for the courtroom. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit interesting, because when all of this happened, Tony Morris very famously talked in a video about how they were not going to change their disfellowshipping practices.
The authorities in Norway have threatened to remove our legal registration because of our scriptural beliefs and practices regarding disfellowshipping. In the future, various governments will challenge our freedom of worship. They may pressure us to change our scriptural beliefs, but we're certainly not going to do that.
Then they removed Tony Morris. They removed Tony Morris from the governing body. We don't know why he was removed or why, he left. We don't even know if he left, right? But after they removed Tony Morris, the Jehovah's Witnesses changed a little bit their disfellowshipping practice. Just a little bit. They don't call it disfellowshipping anymore. They call it removal. And now they add more locks, shall we say, more chances for minors to not get disfellowship, right? They also changed the name of a judicial meeting. Instead of judicial meeting, it's just like committee of elders, something like that. And now Jehovah's Witnesses are arguing that they relaxed a little bit. Like now, instead of just meeting with the committee of elders now one time and then they decide to disfellowship you, they will meet with you if you're a minor. They will meet with you a few times and they will actually not disfellowship you right away. They will give your parents like a little bit of a chance to like handle discipline or whatever, and they may not disfellowship. May not. They still want to disfellowship children. They still reserve the right to disfellowship children, but they pretty promised that they were not going to do it as often, basically, right? That was basically the argument when it came to Norway. Now, fast forward to the verdict, right? We're going to share avoidjw.org because this is what we'll be reading from this. This shows how the ruling is out. So with everything that I told you, it kind of seems like Jehovah's Witnesses were going to lose again, right? They didn't even get rid of their disfellowshipping practice. They didn't even get rid of their disfellowshipping practice with the children. They still do that, right? It's just now they were like, no, we pretty promise we're not going to do it as often. But, disfellowshipping and everything, we're still going to do that. That's what we were all expecting where the verdict came out, for the verdict to be against the Jehovah's Witnesses, being like, no, you brought no new evidence. You just pretty promised that you're not going to do this arguably illegal thing that goes against human rights. You're not going to do it as often, but you're still going to do it. No, look, obviously the appeal should have been, no, that is not what happened. Let me read you what they wrote in avoidjw.org because they wrote it, they summarized it very well. The recent ruling by the Borgarting Court of Appeal marks a disappointing setback for those seeking justice for vulnerable individuals within Jehovah's Witnesses in Norway. Despite previous legal victories that have revoked Jehovah's Witnesses registration as a religious community and halted state subsidies due to their harmful practices, this ruling overturned those decisions, reinstating both their legal status and financial support. I forgot to tell you, the Jehovah's Witnesses were not just asking for their legal status back, but they were also asking for them to retroactively pay them the 1.5 or however many million dollars that the Norway state was giving to Jehovah's Witnesses. They were asking for that retroactive payment for like all of those years. This is close to like $10 million at this point. Like this is millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? Which is why I think they were doing this. Not just that, but remember, this also sets precedent. If in Norway, they're like, Jehovah's Witnesses lose their religious registration because we determined that they go against human rights, then more and more governments in Europe may be like, you know what, if you did that, let me just look into this. And then it opens the doors to governments, first in Europe, and then hopefully in the United States, to do the same. Remove their religious registration and, just get taxes from them. Just start taxing them like everybody else. Anyway, let's keep reading. The core of the case focused on Jehovah's Witnesses deeply concerning the treatment of former members and baptized minors. Former members have testified a few times now, but recently, in February of 2025, about the devastating consequences of leaving the community, including social exclusion and losing contact with family and friends. The Oslo District Court had previously ruled in favor of the state, recognizing that this organization's ostracism created such severe social pressure that it effectively robbed individuals of their right to withdraw from the organization freely. This was seen as a violation of Norwegian laws designed to protect freedom of religion and children's rights. However, the Court of Appeal has now taken a different stance. While acknowledging that Jehovah's Witnesses practices create severe social consequences for those who leave, including fractured families and social isolation, the court ultimately ruled that this did not meet the threshold of sufficient undue pressure to violate the right to free withdrawal. This ruling dismisses the reality that emotional and psychological manipulation can be just as coercive as a physical one. Now, that was basically why the Court of Appeal ruled for Jehovah's Witnesses. These are the Jan Nielsen's comments on the judgment reasonings. Remember, Jan Nielsen is the person that you want to go for this. He is like the main person who started this. He's the person who's pushing for this. He's the guy, right? He's the guy making things happen in Norway, basically. I don't want to diminish the rest of the people who are doing this, but I think like Jan Nielsen was the one who took the initiative and started rallying the troops basically to do this. He didn't do this alone, right? But he is one of the main people who's doing this. The court, let's check what happened, his comments on the pages 13 to 18 of the judgment. I read the whole thing. They basically say people can leave whenever they want and people can shun whoever they want, and that it's not a physical coercion, so it's not enough. We're not going to read the whole thing because it's 20 pages, but we're just going to read what Jan thinks about it, because that's just knowing the important parts of it. The Court of Appeal assumes that the allegations, information that the state has regarding JW's practice of exclusion are correct. The testimonies and the evidence confirms this. We have believed in all of information about the facts of the case, despite Jehovah's Witnesses' attempt to discredit it. Now, in page 20, regarding the right to free withdrawal, the court states, it is not doubtful nor disputed that a withdrawal could have dire consequences for the person who withdraws regarding the possibility of contact with those who are still Jehovah's Witnesses. This also applies to close family members. This could be very difficult for many, both those who have withdrawn and those who remain Jehovah's Witnesses. This is confirmed by the witnesses in the case who had withdrawn or been excluded and the professional literature presented. The question is whether the social consequences as a result of losing or at least having greatly reduced contact with members of the Jehovah's Witnesses, including family members, if one withdraws, conflict with the right to free withdrawal. What this paragraph is basically saying is the question is whether people shunning you conflicts to the right of free withdrawal. If you withdraw from the organization and they shun you, does that conflict with your right of leaving the organization, right? Is shunning enough? Is shunning coercive enough to keep you inside a religion, right? This court argued that no. This is where the court differs from all of the others that have considered the case by writing. Again, every single court has argued if you get threatened with shunning, then it goes against your freedom of religion. That's why they won before. But this Court of Appeal did not see it like that. As stated above, it is practically effortless to withdraw from Jehovah's Witnesses. It is sufficient to send a letter to the congregation about the withdrawal. There is no evidence that a withdrawal is not respected or that the congregation mainly tries to persuade the member to rejoin. None of this was anything that ex-Jehovah's Witnesses argued. By the way, yeah, leaving is easy technically because you just have to write a thing. It's hard because of the consequences of leaving, right? Let's keep reading. Therefore, the possible obstacles to withdrawal are related here to the consequences of withdrawal, which are reduced social contact with remaining members, including family members. This reduced social contact, this reduced is carrying a lot of weight in this one. Reduced, all right. It's not shunning, it's just reduced. You don't get to see them as much in the congregation because you don't go to the congregation. Reduced. This is bad. This is where the Court of Appeal went wrong, in my opinion. Let's keep reading the facts now. I'll give you my opinion later, but let's give you the facts now. Such reduced contact with former members of Jehovah's Witnesses, and especially close family members, such as parents and children with whom one no longer lives, but also, for example, grandparents and grandchildren, would be tough and burdensome for most people. Based on the evidence, the Court of Appeal assumes that such consequences of withdrawal for some are so harmful that some members choose not to withdraw for that reason. The Court of Appeal, nevertheless, believes that these consequences do not constitute sufficient undue pressure to constitute a violation of the member's right to free withdrawal under Article 9 of the ECHR. So the Court of Appeal is like, yes, they do shun. And yes, it is harmful, but it's not enough. Shunning is not enough. It's just a little consequence of leaving, and it should not be, and even though it's harmful, it should not be considered as pressure to against your free to withdraw. Let's keep reading. I don't want to give you my opinion just yet. Let's just finish the facts. The court has therefore accepted the facts that withdrawal either entails extreme consequences implemented by those who receive state aid, assuming that this means that people end up being members against their will, but still believes that this is not sufficient undue pressure. This is where the law and the Court of Appeal completely falls away from the psychological, emotional, and human. If this is not no longer like what the Court of Appeal said. This is Misusato, the person who wrote this article, talking about the differences, right? I just want to make the difference. If the systematic use of family ties as a weapon to prevent people from withdrawing, which the court acknowledges that it is not sufficient undue pressure, then what is? She cites this paragraph. Although the process can be very unpleasant and in part also humiliating, the Court of Appeal nevertheless believes, under doubt, that the process as such cannot be considered psychological violence. The process would normally last for a relatively short period of time until a possible exclusion. The process cannot therefore be said to constitute a pattern of offensive act or behavior that is repeated or persists over time. This is why they ruled it, and this is why this is such a monumental case. You may think, if you are a victim of shunning, you may think, what the hell is this Court of Appeal saying? What the hell is this Court of Appeal saying? What? So this is damaging. And remember, they do this to children, right? They do this to children. And this is damaging for children, but it's not sufficient pressure. That if you're being shunned, or if you know what shunning is, if you've experienced shunning, or even if you've shunned somebody, you know just how big the threat of shunning is in this religion. It's mainly the main reason, like why Jehovah's Witnesses don't leave, right? But if you've never been in a cult, if you just see people in a cult just being like, oh yeah, they're just weird people, and then if you leave, well, I mean, you don't want to talk to these people anyway because they're just weird, right? Like, they're just in a cult, so they're not going to talk to you, and whatever. And unless it's family, unless it's direct family members that you live in their house with, because you still talk to them, right? Because they believe Jehovah's Witnesses. Remember, Jehovah's Witnesses still shun those children. They just technically still talk to them, right? But they still shun them anyway. They're like, oh, I mean, if this tiny group of people shuns this guy, then it's fine, right? Because this is just a weird group of people. Who cares? This is why this is monumental, because this is going to put in law for like pretty much the first time ever. Like, this is going to cement not just that the Jehovah's Witnesses are not supposed to be a religion, which is what they were arguing before. Not just that they're not a charity, not just that they're a damaging religion that should not receive state subsidies, but that shunning is violence. That shunning is psychological violence, which it is, but people don't see it like that yet. So I feel like that is why the Court of Appeal was like, no, we're not going to do anything with you. We're not going to remove your rights or anything, because it's just shunning. There has been some studies that show just how harmful shunning is. Those studies are not in the zeitgeist, right? So where do we go from here? Now, people take that and they were like, well, we lost. We lost, and that means that, but we still won, because Jehovah's Witnesses know that I decided that Jehovah's Witnesses paid people off to testify for them or whatever. And most Jehovah's Witnesses know that, so most Jehovah's Witnesses are going to lose their faith because of this. No Jehovah's Witnesses is going to lose their faith. If this isn't bigger than Jeffrey Jackson lying under oath on stage, and you're seeing him, right? This isn't bigger than that. If Jehovah's Witnesses, if that video didn't break the Jehovah's Witness religion, this process isn't going to break the Jehovah's Witness religion if it fails, right? It only breaks things. It only works if it doesn't fail, right? And that's why I am very happy to tell you all that this is not over. This is not over, because remember, the Court of Appeal sided with them, but the regular court didn't, right? So that's why, like, when people are like, oh, but it's going to be super hard for the state to want to persecute with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court won't want to take it. That's not accurate. Why would the Supreme Court not take it? This is very clearly the kind of things, the kind of cases that the Supreme Court was born for. In the Supreme Court, let's just shift to what Jeffrey Nielsen had to say. Jeffrey Nielsen very kindly opened a Reddit AMA regarding Norway, where people were able to like ask him like pretty much anything. Right now, let's see the full discussion. There's a lot of good information that Jan shared here that I have not seen anywhere else. How long until an appeal is possible? The state has 1 month to file their appeal, so it will be at least 3 weeks for them to consider everything and write it. Most likely 4. Please tell me there will be an appeal. Blah blah blah. I feel confident that the Supreme Court will be the place where this is concluded. In there, they will not gather new evidence, but consider the legal aspects of the ruling. It's totally open in there. So once this goes to the Supreme Court is definitely going to take it. Let me find it. Yeah, the Supreme Court is the next level. If the appeal is filed to the Supreme Court, nothing will happen regarding the status, registration, or money until the Supreme Court has ruled. So nothing changes today. The Jehovah's Witnesses are not getting their religious registration back now. They're not getting the millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're not getting any of that today. Why? Because the state is very obviously going to file it to the Supreme Court. Like they have this is born for the Supreme Court, because remember, this is basically litigating whether shunning considers like it's psychological violence, can be considered that, and not just saying that, but legalizing around it. That's why this had to go to the Supreme Court, I feel, because that nobody had done that before. The fact that Norway is doing this is amazing. We should all be excited about this. Will the Supreme Court look at new evidence if it appeals? No, they won't do it. Like that's not what happens. There's no need to look at the evidence over again. The court does, just like last time, recognize that the Jehovah's Witness practice is like we said it is. They concluded that the testimonials and Watchtower's own material tell the same story. So the practice of shunning is established as a fact. There will be no need for the Supreme Court to consider this. Remember, Jehovah's Witnesses love to be like, oh, family relations continue. Shunning is just basically you don't go to the meetings as much and people don't talk to you as much. But that's it. Like you can even, people even say hi to you at the meetings now. What the Supreme Court will have to look into is the legal conclusion regarding where the lines are drawn. What is psychological violence? When is someone denied the right to freely leave a religion without punishment? How are these things defined? In my opinion, this is an open case when this goes to the Supreme Court hearing. That is why this is going to the Supreme Court. Do you see why? I feel like this was always going to go to the Supreme Court, and people being like, "Oh, we lost. Like everything's lost now." They are missing the point. This is very hard. This is very new. This is pioneering in these kinds of laws, in this kinds of defense for freedom of religion. This hasn't been done anywhere else. That's why this is so hard. If the SE rules in Watchtower favor, the legislators who intended for this law to be used can choose to specify more in the law to avoid this and make the law be easier to use. There's also a possibility that when the state gets the decision back for reconsideration, that's what the verdict says now, then the state can make the same connection conclusions again, just for more extensive reasoning. Now, people are being like, oh, what happened? Somebody paid him off? Like, I don't understand why ex-Jehovah's Witnesses always are like, Jehovah's Witnesses pay people off. Like, if there's something for the Jehovah's Witnesses, then that's because they pay people off, right? No, no, it's far more nuanced. 3 judges. The ruling is based on what they feel that the term psychological violence is not defined good enough in the law and in the state's judgment. I have no reason to believe any foul play is done. Again, nobody's getting paid. This is just what happens sometimes. This is just how things go. There's always some judges that don't accept the psychological violence as a legal term. We were unlucky and got those. See, because this is not properly legislated yet. So it's kind of like up in the air. What is psychological violence and what isn't? And if shunning can consider that. So this would ground it. Oh, check this out. What's next on this one? I'm so angry, I want to riot, blah, blah, blah. Supreme Court will be the next level. Just breathe, calm, and follow the process further. So to everyone being like, this means the end. They're definitely not gonna do this. They're definitely not gonna follow it with the Supreme Court. It's up to the Supreme Court, and we definitely lost. No, this is just another development in this story. I'm 100% sure that the state will file an appeal to the Supreme Court. This will be done in 4 weeks. As for how the Supreme Court will rule, I cannot say. There's elements in this verdict that is obviously up for discussion and reconsideration. Some passages are just absurd. Remember that several judges in several stages have ruled in our favor before we met these 3 now. And even these 3 now have established the same facts as the rest. The Watchtower practice of shunning, as we claim they do it, they just land on the other side of the line with doubts, as they say. That is a very important part of the that I forgot to remind you of. It literally says the 3 judges that rule against it, they ruled it with doubt. They're not even sure that that is the right ruling, which is why this is obviously going to go to the Supreme Court. It's like, don't come at me and be like, no, this is over. No, it's not. No, it's not. So I guess it's anyone's guess until the Supreme Court will end up with it. And then, what will happen? It's pretty much a coin flip. We don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, I asked him, I wanted to know what will happen once this case goes to the Supreme Court. So I asked him, I reached out to him on Twitter, but then I saw that he had done this AMA. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I can just ask him what I wanted to know all along. And he was kind enough to reply. What will the process look like? How long will we have to wait to hear the Supreme Court's resolution? What do you feel are the chances of the Supreme Court ruling against Jehovah's Witnesses, and what factors will be at play in the Supreme Court's decision? So what he said is very insightful. First, the appeal has to be filed. This has to be done within 4 weeks. We won't hear anything until the 4th week, is my guess. Then, within a couple of months, a Supreme Court branch will decide if this case is accepted or not. I expect them to accept this. This branch will have to see if the case is important enough for the Supreme Court, and they will make a preliminary consideration if the case is open for consideration. Both those are pretty obvious. The Court of Appeals themselves say that they are in doubt, and the 2 levels of courts have come to opposite conclusions. So the Supreme Court will decide to accept this case. The Supreme Court hearing in itself won't gather new evidence, run testimonials, etc. They only consider existing case file and the legal reasoning in the verdict. This is done by the judges over a period. The physical hearing and oral argument from the lawyers are done in 1 to 3 days in the Supreme Court. I expect this to happen late this year, maybe November-ish. Then a rule will come in a month or so after that. It's hard to tell what the verdict would be. All judges tend to stay a bit behind the secular development regarding damages and psychology around religion. So it's always been a fight against the odds for us. We'll try anyway. So, just if there was like one person being like, oh no, but I heard other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses be like, this is over and nothing will happen. This is his answer to, is there even a slight chance that the state might want to turn the page and not even want to appeal? Jennifer Nielsen said, I don't see any scenario where this ends here. And after we went through everything that happened, my goal with this was for you to come to the same conclusion. You should not be able to see any scenario where this ends here. This is a monumental case for reasons that hopefully I have made clear throughout what happened in this case. This is a monumental case that is going to define not just if Jehovah's Witnesses are able to be a religion or not just if they're eligible to get back like their $10 million or however much money the state is not giving them anymore, but to classify whether or not shunning can actually be psychological violence that can coerce you into staying in a religion, which we all know that is true. But courts don't because they're very conservative and they feel like, oh, the religions can't really do anything wrong, right? We just need to make sure that this goes to the Supreme Court. And I think, look, this is what will happen in the Supreme Court is a coin toss. I've been following this case very, very, very closely as I can follow it at the other side of the country, of the world. All right, like I'm not in Norway. I wish I was, but literally everyone has sided with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses being like, yeah, no, this is coercive, this is shunning, this should not happen. The only people that haven't did it with doubts in their own, according to their own conclusion. They're doing it with doubts. So I think we have I'm taking ownership of this. You should take ownership of this. This is like an ex-Jehovah's Witness goal that we all want, right? I think we have a good chance that at least the Norwegian government sees the shunning for the violence that it is, for the coercive thing that it is to keep you inside the religion. I really hope that, right? But I don't know. I hope that. And if they do, it's going to be monumental. Now, not just because it's going to put a target on Jehovah's Witnesses back, being like, not the people, but the religion itself, being like, yeah, we probably should not be giving them money just for existing as a government, right? Maybe they can just pay taxes, right? We're not gonna persecute them. I've never argued that is a solution, but maybe they should pay taxes. And if they start paying taxes, then they can't keep it up. It will cause the end of their religion, but it will also be a monumental case for cult survivors around the world. Because if they decide that this is violence, the violence that it is, that we know it is, then people all around the world are going to know that now, at least, there's some legal precedent in some country, a good country, a country that is famous for its freedom of religions and all of that, that shunning shouldn't be used to keep people in high control groups. Yes, you're right, Caleb. How did this happen? You can't leave. I think if the Jehovah's Witnesses layer said that they don't shun, then we all can say no more shunning. We're supposed to be the same all over the world. Yeah, no, lawyers lie for Jehovah's Witnesses all of the time. It's not even like this is the first time that they've lied. They literally lie all of the time. That's how they get away with it, right? That's why when people are like, oh, I mean, at least Jehovah's Witnesses show that they can't play fair. Okay, like can you quote like one time where the Jehovah's Witnesses have actually played fair? Like when the Jehovah's Witnesses have received criticism from the government and they've played fair. Like no, no. So they got their tax benefits back? No, they're not getting their tax benefits back just yet because they're going to file it against the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to decide, and until then, nothing is going to happen because that's the reason why they care. Yes, it is the reason why they cared. Just came to say hi, long-time subscriber. Well, hi. It's nice to realize that this isn't all technically over. We have to keep fighting. Yeah, and this is really cool for us because I feel like some people were almost like silencing the testimony of the people. Be like, oh, I mean, your testimony, God, your testimony, it wasn't just a complete waste because you got to say it out loud. The testimony is not going to reach the highest court in the nation. The Supreme Court is going to read all of the testimonies. It's going to rewatch like all of the testimonies. It's like this is in a way amplifying the voices of the victims because now it's reaching the Supreme Court. Sure, obviously, we wish it wouldn't have happened like this, but in a way, like it kind of was always going to happen like this because it's such a monumental thing and it's a thing that nobody has ever tried before. Jehovah's Witnesses already posted videos to brag about this, can already see their smug faces. No, listen, I looked into JW.org right before live streaming. Let me just look into it right now. I had the news page open. But they hadn't just yet. However, like they have been talking about. Yeah, no, I'm checking the page. They haven't posted anything actually, but do expect something like that. I mean, they made a video of how Jehovah was with them when they managed to file like an injunction or something, and they were able to like hold on to their religious status for like a little bit more. Because they got like an extension basically, and they bragged about that. So 1,000,000,000% expect Jehovah's Witnesses to talk about this. That's why I'm talking about this right now, so you know what to expect and why Jehovah's Witnesses are going to brag about this and why they're wrong. This is not over, okay? This isn't. Jeffrey Bunting says it looks like we have to wait until Christmas for the final judgment. Yes, it is going to be till Christmas, but wouldn't it be amazing? Let's just say this. Imagine we actually get to hear this in like mid-December. Like it's like the last thing that the Supreme Court does before going on vacation, right? On winter vacation. And we actually get like this as a Christmas gift. Wouldn't that be like super cool? Like that would be like that would be like an apostate Christmas miracle or something. So anyway, that is everything that I wanted to tell you about Norway. Let me know what you think about it. As you can tell, I've been looking at this obsessively. That's why I get so pissed when ex-Jehovah's Witnesses give like misinformation or whatever, because I'm like, hey, that's my audience. You're lying to my audience. Why are you doing that? You don't know anything. It's not over. Like, why are you telling my audience that it is over when it's very clearly not over? Like, I don't want you guys to feel down. Yes, this is bad, right? This isn't ideal, but also this isn't over. And it's not over until it's over. So I feel like as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and even as activists, I don't consider myself activism just for reacting to this, but there are some things that I've done for ex-Jehovah's Witness activism that I do consider activism. And I think that it's very important for us to stay optimistic, to not just take anything like, oh, this is over and oh, well, like let's just lick our wounds and be done. No, I feel like it's very important to stay optimistic that this can change, that to stay optimistic that you can actually make a difference, to stay optimistic that the world is better, than the Jehovah's Witnesses ever told us. The Jehovah's Witnesses told us that the world was dangerous, that the world was unloving, that the world was never going to be as good as their religion. And this proves them wrong, right? Even the judges that certified, like that rule for Jehovah's Witnesses, did it in doubt. So I think that if you want to look for a win just now, that's your win. We are making a difference. And even the jury that signed with them know that the fact that they shun children is not, it's not debatable. It's not up for debate. It's a fact.